Welcome back to Survivor's Residuum. Residuum, that Latin word we always come back to, the residue. What is left behind after something has been burned or broken or buried. A few Saturdays ago, I was sitting in church and a man stood up to give his testimony. He didn't look like a headline. He looked like us. And then he said the words that made the whole room go quiet. He said, I was sentenced 86 years to life. Since he was a youth, he's told us he'd been in and out of jail, in and out of prison. That revolving door that so many people know, but few ever get rid of. The system had done its math. The judge had read the number. On paper, his story was over. He was going to die inside. But now, he is sitting across from me today. A free man, a changed man, my brother. Today is not an episode about what he did. It's about what was done in him while everyone else thought he was done for. It's about what survives when a man is told he has no future. It's about the residue that God can still use. This is his survival story. This is Survivor's Residuum. Brother Allerin, I want to thank you for sitting down with us to tell us this story. And I know you just gave a tiny snippet of it at church, but I thank you for trusting me with this story and allowing God to use you in a way to speak to somebody else who may be going through the same thing. Their family members have gone through the same thing. And I believe that we are all history in the making. And so all of our stories need to be told. So I just want to ask you, how are you doing today? And are you ready to talk about your story?
For sure. Peace and blessings. And thank you for this opportunity as well to be on this platform to try to sow a seed in somebody's life. And I'm feeling blessed.
Amen. I appreciate you again for sitting down and being willing to tell us a story. So I'm going to ask you a few questions. What we like to do when we do Survivor's Residuum, a lot of times we talk about heavy topics. In the middle, we try to break it up with some questions. Some of the questions might be heavy. They're just from a random database, and we'll just ask you a few questions. I usually have people spin the wheel and pick a number, but we didn't set that up today due to our technical difficulties. So as we break up the monotony a little bit, asking my questions, I'll just tell you to pick a number between 1 and 10. So you can pick a random number, and then I will ask you that question that is associated with the random number. If you decide you want to pass and you don't want to answer that question, that's just fine. But if not, we'll go ahead and get into it. All right. So my question to you, how does a man who the system said would die in prison get out and stand in a church to give thanks? With your situation, I want to kind of go back and talk about how you got there in the first place. So take me back to the beginning. Where did you grow up and what was home like as a kid?
So I grew up in Stockton, California, born and raised. And I grew up in poverty in a dysfunctional family where there was abuse in the household as well. My original pain was my father abandonment. My biological father was in and out of prison. I was raised by my stepfather who abused me and my siblings. And my mother grew up in a community where it's a gang culture, drugs being slung in front of my house, violence in front of my house, gang members up and down the streets, shooting. And I grew up in church at the same time. So as a child, I grew up singing in the choir, doing Bible studies. Church was a blessing. I didn't understand much, but it was definitely an influence there. And then later on, I changed my ways based on different influences.
I kind of saw your face light up when you said church. It's like that memory to you was a good memory. How do you reconcile the two worlds? Did your mom go to church with you? Did your family go to church with you? Was it somebody from the church that just came and got you in the community? Or was this just like a family tradition?
Well, that was an amazing question and good observation. Imogene was, I would say, my first spiritual advisor growing up. And she would come and get me, my siblings, and all other kids in the community and take us to Mount Zion Baptist Church. And it was from there that I was raised up in church, baptized, sung in the choir, did skits and visited other churches and heard the word of God ministered into my life. Yes, so my mother, she did attend church, but not as often. Nevertheless, there were morals and beliefs, spiritual beliefs that was passed down to me. Later on, I just chose not to listen to them.
Yeah, I think we can all identify with that. When did you first remember getting into trouble? How old were you? Briefly tell us the story, how that happened.
Oh, that's funny. I can remember stealing cookies out of the cookie jar. So Imogene called me stealing cookies out of the cookie jar and gave my butt a whooping. And other than that, started stealing candy out of the store. And sadly, a lot of my attitudes and beliefs that were greater than me came behind, kind of like family, my mother and my stepfather enabling me. I remember going in as a child into Food for Less, and they have that like candy, those candy barrels right there. And my mother would like just tell me, go ahead and grab the candy and eat it. Now, looking back as a kid, we don't think that we're doing anything wrong, but being adults, we know that like that's the genesis, that's the beginning of, stealing candy. So when I got older, I used to go into those stores and go into those barrels, and I knew better because going back to Imogene, she would tell me at a certain age, you know when you're doing right and when you're doing wrong. So the other part of the influence was from my stepfather. He was definitely a entrepreneur, and part of it was stealing or manipulating the system in some form or way. And a lot of his ways were taught to me when it came to stealing.
That's funny because I can identify stealing candy from the store. But the problem with us is that my mother was very strict. She didn't grow up in the Adventist home, but when she came into church, she went full-fledged strict, no sugar, no anything. So we honestly, well, this is my mind. I saw those bins and there wasn't a lock on it. So I thought it was free. The only reason why I was hiding it is because we couldn't eat sugar. But then when my mom found out that we had the candy and then she told us, oh, you stole too? Then I was like, oh, okay. I like that you talked about your parents enabling, because when we talk about childhood, children don't know if they're not taught the right way. And yes, at a certain point, you know right from wrong, but by then it has become a habit of enabling, right? So it's already ingrained in you. So I'm glad you brought that point up. I wanted to go over the story that you were telling yourself about who you were going to be back then. You talked about, Miss Imogene, some people breathe life into us by telling us what they see for us, what they see for our future. But sometimes we tell ourselves a story. So what was the story you were telling yourself about who you thought you were going to be?
So oddly, I thought I wanted to be a police officer. I did. And then it changed. It was changed by the influences that was around me, changed by certain friends that I start hanging around with. And, my mom would tell me, like, so and so, you shouldn't be hanging out with them. But as a kid, as a teenager, I thought I knew it all. But eventually, at a young age, prior to 12 years old, I was already thinking about my bigger cousins and some of his friends. They were part of a gang called Northside Gangsta Crips in Stockton. And oddly, I should say sadly, I didn't feel the love in my household during the times when I grew up. I didn't feel that love. As now looking back, I know that the love was there. It's just it was coming to me in different forms. But I gravitated to being a gangster, a criminal, and putting on many different masks that I wore to protect what was really going on inside of me, where there was a lot of insecurity, a lot of immaturity, a lot of fear and hurt and pain behind the original pain, which was my father's abandonment, as well as the dysfunctional family that I grew up in and the abuse that was going on in the household. So I found love in the wrong place.
I want to say, I guess the word for it, I'm a weeping willow. When people say, you're an empath, you cry about everything. And I feel like when you were giving your testimony in church, it caught me because we talk about redemption, but we don't see it very often. And to hear how long they were trying to give you, but that you were standing in front of us, to me, that brought tears to my eyes. And now, as I'm hearing you talk about, you're in tune with the fact that you were dealing with pain and you were masking that. And I deal with young children that grew up in the hood. And I see right now, 9 years old, 10 years old, 15 years old, them going that way because of already masking. what they're dealing with. And so it is very emotional, but it's also very good for people to hear your story so they understand the signs. You mentioned that you've been in and out of trouble since you were younger, if I'm correct. Walk me through that cycle and what kept pulling you back in.
Being in and out of trouble for me, once I decided not to listen, like to stop going to church, and I'm talking about at an early age, like around 11 years old, I decided to stop going to church. You know, all the thou shalt not steal and love your neighbors and those commandments went out the window. Praying to God went out the window. And it wasn't no more in and out for me, you know. At that time, I became what I call a Christian, a person who is a Crip and a Christian. A Christian. And it's like that person with one foot over here and one foot over there. But for the most part, it was one foot over here and that was in the world. And that trouble to me, it was all the foundation of it was selfishness. Me, 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 me. And when it comes to womanizing, at a young age, I was a player. My stepfather played on my mother. I told my mother she stayed in the relationship. So from that point on, I felt like it was cool to manipulate women and be what I wouldn't call, to me, I would say I was a womanizer. I would say I was a player, you know, so I glamorized it with that word, being a player. So I had trouble in relationships. I had trouble in school, getting in fights, principal calling my mother, getting abused at home for following some of the rules that my family told me to do. And, if somebody hit you, you better hit them back. And then after all that happens and go home and get beat on again by my parents because I was keeping some of their traditions. So stealing candy, getting caught stealing candy as well in stores, staying out at night, drinking and partying, going to juvenile hall behind getting in trouble. Just point blank period, getting in trouble. And there was no in and out. There may have been a time of sit down and a little bit of clarity, but when I'm influenced with the attitudes and beliefs that I had at that time, it was still go forward and kick it with the individuals that I felt who were protecting me, who were somewhat loyal to me, and I can't say somewhat because at that time I thought they were loyal, but these were my friends and these were the things that we were getting into, which to me, it was the usual, but in society, it sure wasn't the normal.
That's interesting. You're not the only person that I've heard talk about that, where it was like you were told by your parents to act a certain way or to react a certain way. I had a friend who, okay, if his sister was getting beat up or something by her age mates, you better protect your sister. Now you need to go beat up this person. Well, now, he about to get beat up by their older brothers. But the standard in the home was you need to fight, but then you get in trouble. How did that affect you mentally? Do you think it affected you mentally? Did you ever think about that?
Great question. So it definitely affected me along with the suppressing of all the feelings that I was going through. I was suppressing all of it. And it wasn't like my stepfather and my mother was emotional coaches. So more than likely it's like, boys, shut up and going over there, get in your room. And this was the type of things that were being said to me. So in a sense, I wasn't even allowed to be my own individual. And that definitely has something to do psychologically with me. So post-traumatic stress, being traumatized, they say trauma is the new gateway drug, or trauma could be the new trigger. And to me, I felt like a lot of the things that I went through in my household was traumatizing. But I think I found a way to live inside of the chaos and start to thrive in the chaos by this persona that I put on allowed me to find my way through it. And the ultimate goal of that persona was hurt people. And I have to be aggressive to get what I want, and can't let nobody see that I am hurting, because I'll just get taken advantage of. So for me, it's kind of like became a defense mechanism for me to protect myself, to do all these other things that make people seem like don't mess with green eyes. That was the name that I gave myself.
Man, all I can hear while you're talking in my head is this I hear the word toxic masculinity. I feel like your family culture in general breeds this toxic masculinity. You talked about womanizing. I have a question. Why did you want to change it? Or was it that you didn't see it as womanizing then? You just thought, okay, I'm going to play a player. You thought that was cool. But also this thing that I think you were very in tune with the fact, no, you're hurting me. I don't like the way I'm being treated. It's dealing with my psyche, but now I have to be quiet. Do you think that you were being taught toxic masculinity in that you cannot have emotions, you can't feel the way you need to feel, and in order to be a man, like you said, you have to be aggressive, you have to grab what you want, or you have to be a womanizer? Do you feel like that was a part of what you learned growing up?
Definitely. I feel like I've seen other people, other children, I should say, behave in a certain manner because it wasn't like I was the first one that did this. When they made the movie Baby Kids, I kind of like ventured into that type of lifestyle as a baby
I
kid.
have to unmute when you say baby kids because that's all I can think of. Okay, go ahead.
I'm telling you. And there were some kids on Julian Street. I stayed on Phelps. They were the true Bebe kids. But like I said, I wasn't the original, so I had to see it. And I seen it through other children who treated their mother and their father certain ways and acted out and became, aggressive or what we call a bad kid. And fulfilled this self-fulfilling prophecy. And for me, yes, the masculinity, definitely the macho paradox. I had it all. And unbeknownst to me, I didn't even know it. I just lived it until I became educated and seen like, oh, wow, this is some crazy stuff I was going through. And now I have to be honest with myself. I need to get some help. I need to see how many screws I can tighten up in this big head of mine.
Yeah, I mean, one thing that, and I don't have experience with this. Of course, I have family members that have dealt with it, but praise God, I haven't had to deal with it. I think the one thing that you find when people do get out is that they are more, if they took the opportunity while they're inside, better equipped to heal because of the education. So when you said, let me see how many screws I can tighten, it's like you actually sought that out to say, okay, there's something going on here. I need to probably be educated to help myself. Is that something that you learned while you were inside? Is that something that you learned before? Was that always kind of you, like trying to be educated about things, or that just came about?
Yes, definitely. There's a way of thinking when it comes to talking to mental health, especially in the behind the walls and for the incarcerated population. Some may think like it's not cool to go and talk to mental health to check out your brain. So I don't know. I look at it as if like a car. Every type of piece of electronic computer device, it needs to be upgraded. I look at the brain the same way. So the stigma that was wrapped around it, I threw that away with all the other attitudes and beliefs because, even the Bible teaches me that I have to renew my mind. So that was just another piece of the puzzle that I believe God was helping me with. And I sought out education. I know that education is a big component, it's the key to my healing as well. So yeah, I had to throw away that stigma and find out. Cause I knew I've been through some stuff growing up as a child, and I knew I would have to go and talk to the commissioners of the Board of Parole. I need to have it all figured out. And the most important part is I needed to figure it out for myself, not just for them, but I needed to know what happened to me growing up. And so that's when the journey began.
That's very powerful that I like that you said you had to throw that away with all the other beliefs, all the other things that you had to get rid of, and bringing in the scripture about renewing your mind. I think that's very powerful that even with all that you've gone through, you knew that it had to start with you. Nobody else could do it for you. You had to start with you. What was life like on the outside between stints? You said you had that 3 strikes. So that means that you went in, you came back out, you went in. Were you ever able to picture a different life between that time?
No, so at the age of 12, I started smoking weed and started to get into robberies and gang banging as well, getting into fights, and that was selling drugs as well. Just being what I call a lifestyle addiction. It's all the addictions wrapped up in one. It's the most lethal one. I was in and out of jail for possessions of cells, and I couldn't figure it out. I went to church. Like, I seen a little bit of light, but let me go holler at this female. That's why I'll go to church. Let me go holler at her. And other than that, it was back into the streets life, dealing with, well, not even dealing with, but having this substance use disorder, smoking weed, smoking methamphetamine, snorting coke, popping ecstasy. And that's progression all the way up into the age of 21. So I really started get into the hard drugs at the age of 21. Up until that point, it was nothing but weed. It was weed and alcohol. I don't want to minimize it. It was weed and alcohol, which is a drug as well. And I had a substance use disorder and dealing with those things. But nevertheless, I was in denial about my problems with smoking and drinking and being a gang member and committing crime. So in and out of jail, that was another part of it. Domestic violence, toxic relationships, petty theft. Going from a drug dealer, having cars, having numerous women, being a player, the glory that I had at that time, which I seemed that it was glory, it started fading away, and it faded away. All the cars was gone, all the money started disappearing, the relationships, the toxic relationships, even those relationships started dwindling. And I found myself in a place where I was actually homeless, had help from my family because my family always loved me. But nevertheless, I was isolated. I did not want to seek help from them, extend my hand out for help. I'd rather cry. I'd rather cry and go into an abandoned apartment and start using it again when I know I don't want to use. And that became my lifestyle until like getting incarcerated, getting locked up, going to the county jail, doing little stints. It's like a slap on your wrist. Yeah, a little clarity of 6 months clean time, which is the most clean time I've ever had. But then while I'm doing that clean time in the county jail on the honor farm, in my mind, in the back of my mind, there's some type of criminal thinking of how can I get out and, you know, make myself the person who I was trying to portray myself to be. Like, how can I get back harder? How can I get these cars, these rims, and I need TVs in my car. I need to have my clothes look a certain way because it's all I've ever known. Need to come back harder. And that was part of the reason why, like, the 2 strikes that I took in 2005, which I want to bring some clarity to. In 2005, I took a deal for 2 strikes and a year local. And all that was behind me wanting to get back out and show people, look, I can get out when I want to get out. And it was also behind the substance use disorder that I had in dealing with methamphetamine at that time. And some people had told on me, and I wanted to get back and show them, like, hey, I can get out. And that was the biggest mistakes I made in my life. And 8 months later, I was back with the 3rd strike. So 3 strikes and you're out.
Wow. So I guess I'm going to pause on this area. I would just kind of hover around this for a little bit because I think that you place it right. You had a substance abuse disorder, right? And especially people that are homeless, just to get through cold nights, there's certain things that you do. What is the difference with the system? It looks like your 3 strikes were surrounding drug use, right? Or was it drug use and the things that you were doing while under the influence? Because there's rehab for people with drug use, but I don't necessarily know that incarceration is a rehab. So can you explain that to me?
To kind of like keep it simple, like I said, my stepfather was an entrepreneur. I learned a lot of things from him prior to even doing any drugs. So before I was in any substance use disorder, I already was living a lifestyle of addiction and dealing with stealing. So without the drugs, I still would have been stealing. I was a gang member. Criminality, being a criminal is, part of being a gang member. Some gang members are not criminals, but I was a criminal and a gang member. So hurting people was part of my attitudes and beliefs. And it really had nothing to do with physical violence, which I got into as well, but I'm talking about like just stealing and doing robberies and stuff like that. I was doing that way before I even got into any drugs.
Okay. I appreciate the clarity on that. After this question, we are going to cut to what would be our wheel and do our random questions. Those might be a little bit deeper than the ones I have, but we don't know. We'll see. I just want to ask, was there a moment where you just accepted, this is who I am, this is where I belong? Was there a moment where you were like, this is what I'm going to be? Because I heard you say, I'm going to show them that I can get out and get back on top. Is that where you were like, listen, I'm going to dominate this. I'm going to be respected?
Well, that's a hard question. I think for the most part, I lived that my life from the beginning to the end. I accepted it at the age of 12, and the progression behind those beliefs as a gang member and a criminal evolved, definitely. So I can't really pinpoint a moment when, but I can say it was a lifestyle. It was definitely a lifestyle, and the involvement, the evolution was definitely real. A short answer for that one.
Okay, we'll take that short answer. I appreciate that. Sometimes these questions that I have, people are like, where you get that from? It makes you think, And that's one of the reasons why I don't give questions ahead of time, because I want it to be real in the moment where you're like, I got to actually answer this question.
If you would have asked that question about, like, when was it that you said you were going to go full-fledged in following Jesus Christ, I can give you the day, the time, and the year, everything. But I don't have that.
Well, we going to get there. We're not there yet. We're going to get there, though, because I want to hear that, too. All right, so I'm going to have you pick a number between 1 and 10. And I'm going to ask you a random question. These are not my questions that correspond with that number. So go ahead and pick a number between 1 and 10.
7.
Okay, number 7. Okay, number 7 is about loneliness. Okay, what was more lonely? Being locked up with 100 men around you. I don't know if it was 100, but being locked up with 100 men around you, or being free and trying to figure out how to fit into a world that moved on without you?
Man, you caught me off guard with that. That's an emotional question right there. Kind of got me tearing up a little bit. So I know for sure that once I came home, my mother was not here anymore. She was my greatest support, and I found myself in a world where when I turned around, that support wasn't there for me. And that in itself has been one of the most difficult challenges that I'm still swimming through. And I believe from other testimonies about how to grieve, and it's a lifelong journey. So I can definitely say that it was the latter of the question, coming home and seeing that parts of the world, parts of my life, my nephews are older now. I have nieces and nephews who are younger, who I'm blessed to be able to be a part of their life and treat them as if, hey, I didn't have a chance to treat my older nephews and nieces a certain way because I was behind bars for the last 20 years. So now there's no way I can make it up, but I can create new memories. And, but nevertheless, the world and life has evolved since I've been home, and I have these moments where I have to stop and pause, and it's like an aha moment. And just the other day I was in church. Actually, yesterday I was in church, and I had this moment like, man, my mom would be right here with me right now if she was here. So it's those type of moments that create loneliness for me as well.
Thank you so much for being transparent and digging deep and being able to answer that question. I didn't understand the gravity of the question when I asked it, but I appreciate you for being honest and answering that question. You initially were sentenced to about 34 years to life, and then you got resentenced. Take us to the case that got you that. What happened in your own words?
So there was a night that I decided to blame the world for all the problems that I was going through. And I stood on the corner one night, said, because you guys don't care about me, and no one cares if I was to die tonight, and all you guys are asleep in your nice homes, and because of this, I'ma do everything. Like, I basically told myself, everything is mine. Like I said, I was doing burglaries. I was the thief at that time. So I decided to steal whatever I wanted. A crime spree occurred. Started off with Miss Saunders and went on to Rosemary Sanchez and Mr. Rodriguez, Rios, Miss Cata, Lacios, Rios. So the crime spree happened where I'm doing all these burglaries and going into people's house, whether they're home or not. I didn't care at that time. I just wanted to, what I was doing was revamping my identity by taking everything I can and be creating this persona of, hey, I'm back. I got this, I got that. And all along, there was a list of people of who I had harmed, mounting up. It was mounting up. I found myself being arrested while I was in Miss Carter, Tahoe, leaving the crime scene from all the other crimes that I committed. And I was pulled over by the police. The Stockton Police Department pulled me over and I ran from them, got in a fight with them, tried to beat them up or do whatever I could to get away. And eventually I was apprehended, knocked out, beat up, and took to the San Joaquin County Jail. And at that time, I believe that the people who were calling police on me, the way I put it, I got help for myself, and the community of Stockton was able to sleep better at night without this criminal going around traumatizing and hurting everyone that was being hurt behind my selfish ways. So April 2006, from April the 3rd to April 13th.
You were for sure you went on a spree. You were like, this is it. You were for real when
I
you made that
mean,
declaration. Did you make that declaration out loud in your head? Was it just like, what were you I heard what you said, but I'm going to ask you specifically. What were you thinking? What were the thoughts that were going through your mind at that time?
but yeah, that was it. That was really what, I mean, I can play it back. I could see myself right there on that corner that night, 2 o'clock in the morning, looking at everybody in their houses, like sleep, like and my rational thinking, like they was supposed to be up, worried about me. I told myself and I spoke it and I said, because of this, everything in Stockton is mine now. Because if I was to get murdered, you guys wouldn't care. And I told those were my actual thoughts, and I basically told you, like, that was the actual factual thoughts. And then to answer the latter part of that question, that was just what I got caught for. That crime spree was what the police officers was able to, and the detectives was actually able to put me at these crime scenes and come up with a case against me. Now, I know the big story, like, there were a lot of more people that was hurt by my actions that's not part of the story. And it's often said in prison, I'm here for the things I got caught for. If I would have been here for the things I didn't get caught for, it probably would have been more worse. Just put it like that.
Wow, wow. Thank you for being transparent. I want to belabor this just for a second. You said that you felt if you got murdered, nobody would care. So in that moment, were you thinking like, I'm on a suicide mission because if I do get caught, the police are going to try to shoot me and whatever? Well, bring me to that understanding when you're talking about where you said if you get murdered, nobody will care. So this is what you get. Where did that come from? That thinking if you get murdered? Why did you think you were going to get killed?
Well, it's the lifestyle I was living. You know, one, I was a gang member. Two, I was doing all these acts, and really, it was a justifiable statement that I gave myself to have permission to go ahead and do what I needed to do to create this identity that I wanted. But going back to the question, there was another part of the question that you had asked me I wanted to address, and I really can't bring it. I can't bring it back right now. But when it comes to being murdered, yes, people were trying to get at me in certain ways. There were those type of games being played as well, but not on a grand scale. But like I said, that was a justifiable thought that I gave myself to do what I needed to do. But there was another part of the unconsciousness of the decisions that I was making which taps into certain beliefs that I had, like by any means necessary. Like, why did I carry a gun? Well, that was because if I had to, I would. Like, I need to get away. So that's why I got it for. It wasn't to protect myself, but it was murder someone or to get away by any means necessary. I was doing things that were suicidal, but I didn't think in my mind, like, I'm on this suicidal trip, this mission. I'm on one. It wasn't like that for me. It was just my actions. I was placing myself in situations where my life, I wouldn't say suicidal, more like homicidal. Like if I'm going into somebody's house and all these guns and I can be killed and things of that nature. Like when I ran into the police that day, I got into an altercation with them because I wanted to get away.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for explaining that. Do you remember the moment that the judge read that number, 86 to life? What went through your head? Maybe you don't remember the moment, but when you heard that sentence, what went through your head?
So can we go back to the 36 years of life?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Take us there. Take us there.
So the 36 years of life is like, okay, well, I'm going to appeal this. The judge is saying, don't do it. I gave you grace. You do it. They're going to give you more time. Please don't do it, Mr.
Hold on real
Frazier.
quick. If you do it, what they're talking about do it, they mean don't appeal?
Right.
Okay, okay.
And the judge is saying, don't appeal it, Frazier. I gave you grace. You know, they're going to have me give you more time if you appeal it. In my mind, I'm thinking, no, that's not true. You don't want me to get any get back. So I'm going to appeal it anyway. And that's when it all went bad. So I ended up appealing it. They called me back for resentencing, gave me 50 more years to life because I couldn't be sentenced concurrently. I needed to be sentenced consecutively as a third striker. So when they gave me 86 years to life, that was actually the first time that I started to check on my mental health. That was real challenging for me. And I checked in because I was going through a lot of stress at that time. So that was my first time checking into with mental health. And that was back in 2009.
So, how long had you been in? I'm sorry, I'm going off script because I'm just so interested. How long had you been locked up by the time you decided, like, I'm going to appeal this sentence? Was it soon after you got the initial sentence, like, okay, I'm going to appeal this? Or how long had you already been in and you're like, no, I need to appeal this? And then when they said don't do it, do you believe that you were being cocky or did you believe like, no, I have to do whatever I can. I have to take a chance?
I believe that I was being cocky and also appealed that day in court when I got sentenced 36 years of life. That's when I started my appeal, 2007.
Okay. What was the first night like in your cell knowing that number? I heard you said that's when you had to check in with your mental because that's when you were going under a lot of stress. Was it a long night? Was it stressful? Was it like, I just need to sleep because I can't deal with this? What was that knowing like my cockiness didn't pay off? I pushed myself further back. What was going through your head?
Well, at that time, I was not rationalizing. At that time, I was in denial about everything. In 2009, when I got resentenced, it was a eye-opener for me, and it was the beginning of God calling me. But nevertheless, I still was in denial about the harm that I caused to society, myself. And that night, if I can recall, never really thought about that night. After spending almost 3 years in prison, it was a night like all other nights, but now I have 50 more years to life. Eventually, I started getting some clarity once I stopped doing drugs because I was still using when I was in prison. I had to suppress a lot of the feelings I was going on, and I still had to put on the mask of this tough guy because I'm in prison as well. So it's like, yeah, I come back. I got 86 years of life. They gave me 50 more years, and it's still like I'm still a Crip, and I still have to perform a certain way so it don't look like I'm hurting, but inside I'm really crying.
Wow. That just painted a whole different picture. When you said, I'm still a Crip, right? You still are in survivor mode. And now you don't have the world as your oyster. You are in this cell. Everybody knows you're a Crip. Everybody knows where you stand. Now what do you do? Now you have to be even more masculine and mask the pain that you're going through. I want to pause to do another random question before we get into your next act, the turning point, where you begin to let God do the work. So I'm going to have you pick another random number, not 7, a random number between 1 and 10.
4.
All right, number 4. Number 4 is a question about small freedoms. What is a small freedom you now have that we take for granted, but you still catch yourself thanking God for, like going to the fridge at midnight or locking your own bathroom door?
You're hugging a tree.
Hugging a tree. Do you seriously go hug trees?
Since I've been out, I hugged a tree like 3. It's a specific tree that I hug. I've hugged it 3 times, but in prison there are no trees.
Wow, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. In your testimony, you talked about God restoring you. Was there a specific moment, a person, a breaking point, a pamphlet, something that brought you back to that smile that I saw earlier when you were talking about church as a child?
Well, the moment was after I got resentenced. There was an individual, when I went back to the county jail, they put me in this holding cell as they changed the shift. They were doing this shift change. And there was this individual I grew up with. Now, the smile wasn't there because I just had got 50 years of life. And he was telling me, hey, God is calling you. And, at that time I was cursing. I said, I just got 50 more years of life. What do you mean God is calling me? And there were some cuss words involved in that. And he was like, I'm telling you, God is calling you. And he went on a rant. 3 months, I would say 3 to 5 months later, my life was totally in God's hand. I had baptized, but the moment that put a smile on my face was the night that I stayed in the room and contemplated what 2 of my spiritual advisors, who were Seventh-day Adventists, James King and my cousin Anthony Lamont Webb, had me on this thought. They had been actually teaching me the Word of God and fellowshipping with me. And they just told me to think about where do you want to go, heaven or hell? And I thought about it that night. And not only did I think about that, because I grew up in church, so I knew the morals and the commandments that I had left. But I also knew as a gang member, I didn't want to be a gang member sagging my pants at the age of 56 years old, looking stupid and doing all these crazy things that I was seeing individuals on the yard doing. But I also thought about all the people that I harmed as well. And it was that time that I did my first inventory and started thinking about what they call the ripple effect. And it was that night I said, I'm just gonna give my life back to God. I'm gonna give my life back to God, and I'm gonna go back. I'm gonna go back to this yard, and I'm gonna tell these Crips. I also was part of a prison gang too, called Northern Crips. That's all the Northern Crips in California. They have a card. They call it NC. So I was part of that card. So that I had to go out and tell them guys hey, you know what? It's done. I hung it up. It's over with. I'm going back to being my authentic self, Alvin Frazier. I'm through. So it was that morning when I got to go back out to the yard and I addressed my Christian brothers first. I was like, man, that was the best joy right there. It's telling everybody I gave my life to Christ last night, man. I'm done. And that was the peace that surpasses all understanding. And knowing going forward, it really didn't matter about who said what about the gang life, or it's just it's over with. I know I wanted to be the person, I wanted to be that boy who went through those challenges, but who knew better. And I said, I'm getting back to that. So that was amazing time in my life where I can look back and say, okay, that's a beautiful smile that I had, and I still wear it, and it brings me peace today to know that, God is the one that gives the peace that surpasses all understanding through his son, Jesus Christ, who saved me. So that's it.
Wow, that is very beautiful, and I'm getting very emotional thinking about the courage that it took, because now I'm no gang member, but I know blood in, blood out. It made me think about the finality of the decision that you made with Christ, and it also made me think about these 2 words. Now, I'm not sure how much. I know you said you grew up Baptist in the church, but you also have a frame of reference for Adventism. And I know that in Adventism, we don't necessarily talk a lot about things in the spirit world and renouncing and denouncing. But these two words, I want to bring this out, okay? So the word denouncing is the act of publicly and strongly stating that someone or something is wrong, illegal, or evil, okay? And renouncing is the act of formally or publicly giving up, rejecting, or letting go of a claim, right, belief, or way of life. It means you state clearly that you no longer own, support, or accept something. And I used to get confused by the two. But what I see is that you did both, because by saying you're going back to your name, what your parents called you, who you are, right? In essence, without saying it, you're denouncing the Crips. You're denouncing what they stand for, because you're saying, I cannot be a part of this. But you also were renouncing whatever you had to do to get in that gang, whatever you did to maintain your status within being a Crip. You said publicly, I'm letting go. I'm rejecting this. I have a different way of life. And for that, I know sometimes we big up the person. I don't want to say I'm proud of you. I just want to say how much courage that took. And I applaud you for allowing Christ to lead you in that way. And I see, you're here today, that he protected you through that. Were you afraid to make that decision?
Definitely the protection is still here. That decision was just not one I needed to make, a once in a lifetime type of decision to denounce and renounce. Like, I left that prison, then I went to San Quentin, because that was at a Los Angeles prison, Lancaster. Now I got to go to San Quentin. Now I got to go to my backyard, DVI, Dual Vocational Institution. Now I got to go to Solano, and now I have to go to Folsom. And every yard I have to go to, that same courage, hey, what's up with that? That's Green Eyes right there. What's up, cuz? What's going on? And the same courage, the same spill of who I am in Christ needed to come forward so that I can sow a seed in their lives, whether they like it or not. But this is who I am today. And I'm proud of myself, and thank you for being proud of me as well. But another good time in my life, a time that brought a big smile on my face, was when my mother, she came and see me. My mom came and see me, and she said, I was in the store and some guy ran up on me and talking about, hey, you Green Eyes mom, huh? You Green Eyes mom. And she said, yeah. And he said, he not Green Eyes anymore. He not Green Eyes. And my mom told me that story. I was like, wow, my testimony had hit somebody. It impacted someone to the point where they ran up on my mom and said, well, he not Green Eyes no more. He's Brother Al.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. And just the vision of you had to go all those places. I gotta renounce here. I gotta denounce here. And you had to do it over and over again. That's a testimony in and of itself. Just that right there, talking to all of us as believers and non-believers, that this is not a one-time thing. We have to die daily. Every time we encounter our old self, the old sin man, we have to, again, I denounce that. I renounce that and align ourselves with Christ. So that's amazing. That's amazing. My next question, we kind of already talked about this. What started changing first? Your habits, your mindset, or your faith? What do you think started changing first?
I believe it would be my mindset, the thinking of the harm that I caused, the thinking of where do I want to spend eternity, the thinking of, well, how can I live now? What would be my new habits? How would I walk? Eventually, these brothers who were at Lancaster prison, just shout out some names: James King, Anthony Webb, Brother Fred, Brother Jason Virgil Clark. These amazing brothers who were around me to show me what Jesus looks like, to show me that new attitudes, new beliefs, new way of love, to show me God's word in the study, daily out there on the yard, church on the yard, literally we were having church on the yard. And this was the new habits. This was the new morals, the new principles that I had gathered for 4 years, being in a cell with my cousin who taught me and showed me what Jesus is like, and then to take that journey to those other different prisons once the foundation is laid. And so in those 4 years, the habits that you spoke about, the thinking, the renewing of the mind, everything started taking place for me. And when it was my time to go, when Jesus felt like, hey, I'm gonna send you over here to meet up with this other guy. He's gonna be your spiritual advisor. He already know you coming. He's waiting on you. And God had a place for me there. And then God said, okay, now it's time for you to leave here and you're going to be on your own. You have to start it up for yourself now. And God walked me through that. And then from every other prison, people knew like, okay, that's Brother Al.
That's powerful. You had the training wheels on, and then God said, all right, it's time to take the training wheels off. You're leading this time. I'm going to have you be the mentor now, as Pastor was talking about discipleship. So now you are discipling people. That's beautiful. When did you realize the door might actually open again? Take me there.
So in 2014, I had a dream, and it was well, it wasn't confirmation, but I had other dreams that were like God literally gave me confirmation, but that's a whole nother platform for that. But those other dreams being confirmed gave me the faith that I needed to know. Like God said, look, I'm about to split the Red Sea for you. You gonna walk through on dry land. You're getting out, and it's gonna be so miraculous that people is going to believe that you told on somebody. And that literally happened. And that was confirmation within itself when I heard someone say, you must have told on somebody since I've been out. It's like, wow, confirmation on top of confirmation. But it makes me laugh because God, he's amazing. And in 2014, when he gave me that dream, I started looking and I started seeing well, where it's at? And all these different propositions start being put on the table, like Prop 36, Prop 47, Prop 57, 1170D, 1170D1, 2.1, and all these different numbers. And I'm like, nope. Okay, well, when, Lord? And I've never lost faith. I just knew that it was coming. And God, I would tell it to my mother, and I would just know that God, he was going to get me up out of this place. And I was actually preparing to keep it 100 with you. I was preparing to go to the board ever since 2016, 2017. I had revised up until the time that I got released. I had revised my parole plans, my relapse prevention plans, my remorse letters, my support letters, all these different things. I had revised them 3 or 4 times. The district attorney of San Joaquin County had denied me for some type of post-release resentencing. So it was all these things was happening, and I still kept faith, and I just knew it. And they say faith comes by hearing and hearing by the word. And it was in 2025 that I overheard an individual say he got resentenced due to exceptional conduct. And one of my brothers in Christ named Mr. Douglas, he used to always tell me, if you was in the bank and you overheard somebody say, this is how you get $1 million. Now, if you overheard it and you knew that it was true, wouldn't you do it if it was in your ability to do it? And I told him, yeah. So that always stuck with me. And I felt like that day when I heard him say that about the exceptional conduct, that was for me. And that was in line with what Mr. Douglas had told me about the $1 million. So I said, I need to check that out. And I did. And I talked to the individual, and he told me why he was exceptional. And I thought to myself, well, I'm just as exceptional, And he told me, well, fill out this form. And I prayed and asked God, help me fill that form out to the warden, and the warden accepted it.
Wow. I wish I had better, production skills, because I'm over here, and you can't hear anything because I'm muted while you're talking. But wow. The one thing that I am seeing is that you've been very attentive along this journey. And that's something that I want to bring out, or I would like the listeners to see, that sometimes it's not about what people say. It's about what people have done, and take notice. And so for you to be giving your story, I feel like along the way, you've always had this, you've been attentive to a point where you can see what's going on around you, and you've been able to tap into that. And I think that's been very helpful for you. So I hope people that are listening to this take heed to that. And we're going to do one last random question before we get into our final portion. I'm going to have you pick one more random number between 1 and 10, not 7 and not 4.
9.
All right, number 9, about the cycle. Okay, you know that revolving door better than anyone, in and out since you were young. What do you think actually breaks that cycle? It wasn't more time, so what was it? What breaks the cycle?
I would say honesty, willingness, and courage. Being honest about who I hurt, not just others, but myself as well. Being honest about why did it start? Hurt people hurt people. Having the courage to change and the willingness to allow other people help me and stop leaning on my own understanding, stop thinking about things the way I would think about things. And a lot of time it was irrational thinking, but I had to be open-minded to my rehabilitation. I had to be open-minded to my faith as well. So I would say those things.
Thank you. That's beautiful. So we're going to talk finally about kind of where you are now. I want you to walk us through the day you got out. What did freedom smell like? What did it feel like? What does it taste like? In your own words.
So there's a big thing that happens when everyone gets out. For the majority of the individuals that get out, they want to go out to eat. And that was my whole thing for a long time, like a long 15, 16, 17 years. I was going to go to Marie Callender's with my sister, and all of that has a meaning of why I was going to do it. But like I said, my mother had passed prior to me getting out. And 3 days prior to me getting out, I thought about what I really wanted to do was to pay respect to my mother and then go eat later. But I needed to do that first. That day came and it was amazing. It was amazing. And it was things that happened prior to that and dealing with correctional officers and the way they was treating me. And it was just like the staff in the prison, the way they were treating me as well. I was released. I stepped out of the van and my sister was there, and there was another individual who came by way of my lawyer, sent him to take me out to eat. Now, this is where like the rich was kind of through in the game, but I was like, you know what? Because of the respect that I have for my lawyer, I'm going to go ahead and do this with this individual. And I went out to eat. He had came all the way from LA to support me by way of my lawyer. So I felt like, okay, I can do that. And to this day, he's my friend. He's going to stop by a few times. But to get back to that day, as I sat in the fresh air and sat in the diner and looked around, it was so weird. Everything was so weird. And I was like, just being in the car is like feeling a certain speed limit is like too much a little bit. Cause I don't know if you guys know, but an individual who first gets out and you're driving on the freeway, and to us, even the way I drive now is unconsciously I'm doing things that when I first would have got out would have spooked me. Like I would have been in my seat just like having anxiety. To me, that day, it was definitely there when I was driving with my family and in the restaurant eating and laughing and being interviewed by my friend and having this magnificent plate of breakfast, like covering the whole table. And it's like, remind me like the prodigal son when he threw the robe on him and just like, we gonna kill the fattest calf and we just gonna have, give it all to him. And I was happy and I was excited, but then I also knew that I had to go. Once the fun part of it was over with, I had to go do what I wanted to do, which was see my mother grave in her gravesite, go visit her and give honor to her, to my greatest supporter. So after that, we left, hugged, and went to the gravesite and cried. And my sister came up to me and was like, "Brother, you all right?" And was rubbing my back, and I said, "No, I'm not all right." And to receive support and love in those moments and just sit there and have that healing part start for me was what I needed. Because, my mother, I love her so much. And she knew she would tell everybody, my son is getting out. My son is getting out. She had so much faith. People didn't believe. How could this guy that got 86 years of life get out? And she was telling them before it even happened. So when I called my mom back in December of 2024, she passed away April 12th, 2025. And when I told her that, she got to hear it. She got to know, like, hey, my son is coming home. The secretary and the warden is resentencing him, but she didn't actually get to see it. So I needed to pay that respect to her. And I did. I put the flowers on it, the roses, the balloons, and we had a awesome time. A lot of family members who I hadn't seen. And this was all in 2 days, the first 2 days. It was really the first 2 days was all about my mother. And a lot of family members who I hadn't seen in 20 years, they were there with me as I got a chance to grieve my mother with my family. That was amazing.
Yeah, just the image of that is just so beautiful. In your sorrow, you were not in a cell. You were there with your family, getting that support, grieving together. And that right there, that's just beautiful. I want to ask, what do you think has been the hardest part of being outside that people do not talk about? So think about something that is not common. What do you think is the hardest part?
That part I just talked about, but I'm gonna give you something else. But that part I just talked about, turning around and seeing that loneliness that still is here, that still has to be dealt with. But I'm gonna give you another example. After doing 20 years or however long, anyone watching, if you were incarcerated or if you're just learning about it, about the struggle that individuals go through, I would say, especially for someone who finances is not there. Like some people come out, they have more finances than others, but some people come out with zero. So I'm gonna speak to that. The support, the resources. A lot of the time, especially from Stockton, California, I parole to Oakland, San Francisco, kind of like this area, the Bay Area, has a lot of more resources than in Stockton, San Joaquin County. So an individual getting out is struggling with transitional housing, especially just start there with the transitional housing. Some transitional housing don't have resources. They don't have connections, so like you may not be able to get a ride to go get your California driver's license or your birth certificate, or let's say to get on what they call it, Cal Fresh, or think it's called Cal Aid, something Aid, Medi-Cal, basically. These things are like some of our first of our parole plan, our goals. These are the goals that we want to set within the first week. This is what we want to do. But when we get out, we see like there's no rides. Who's going to take us? You thinking about getting on the bus? Well, you got to have money to get on the bus. Then you got to know where you're going, and you're in a whole nother city. And guess what? They don't even, well, yeah, they take money, but it's different, right? And then having individuals to help you, take you shopping. So there are resources, organizations that will give you a cell phone, give you Clipper card, give you like wash clothes, cloths, deodorant, hygiene, toothbrush, toothpastes, like razors, all the little small things that's so important to an individual that don't have nothing. There are organizations that will take you shopping, and then there are people who just have been out and been through it before that will show up for you and do things for you as whether you want to say that a friend or not, but this person is showing love, even though they don't even know you. They taking you shopping, spending hundreds of dollars on you, taking you out to eat and don't even know you. Like that type of support is out here for us. We just have to know how to get it. So that can be a struggle in the transition phase. But I would say stay in tune with the connections while you're in prison. Be in tune with these organizations that's out here right now. So when you do get out, it's already there for you. And some of those organizations, I must say, is Family Bridges. They have a good support network for resources. They have the Homecoming Project, which gives you 6 months rent free that's utilize that. That's valuable. And there's many other organizations as well. So just stay in tune with where those resources are and apply it once you get out.
I can add the links in the description because definitely want to make sure that people have resources. That's very important. And that's something that a lot of us wouldn't even think about. We think, okay, well, you're releasing somebody, you must be giving them what they need, but apparently it's not always there unless they know how to get it. So you stood up in church to give your testimony. This is how I met you. Why was it important for you to do that? Did somebody ask you? Did you say, hey, I got a testimony, I want to say this? Why is it important to come back to church? And, sometimes people in church can be very judgmental, very standoffish. What did you think you were getting out of that? Or was this like God telling you, hey, I want you to tell your truth?
It was many factors in it. Someone did ask me would I like to share my testimony, and then there was a certain time frame that was put on it that I struggled with for a minute, and then the Lord told me, well, what if I needed you to tell your testimony in 30 seconds? I was like, okay, Lord, all right. So standing up in front of everybody, it's like baptism. It's a public announcement like, hey, this is what the Lord did for me. And then I also want to know like the meaning at the end of that testimony. I said, I guess what I'm trying to tell you guys is that God still speaks to individuals. Like God is still talking to people, and he's still in the business of the miraculous. And we don't have to look no further than ourselves to see how God is doing miracles every day. So if I was still worried about people, I'll still be in that same thought that I had that night of, because of this, I'm gonna take whatever I want because nobody loves me. Nobody don't care if I get murdered. Like I'll still be in that same way, that people pleasing, that wanted to be accepted, all that. If I still lived in that, I wouldn't be able to stand up and give a testimony behind my fears. But God has brought me a long way. And it's not even me that's doing it. It's really the Holy Spirit that's working in me, because I'm not even practicing for this type of stuff. It's just let the Holy Spirit speak, like you said. Like the prayer before this was important because now the Holy Spirit is giving room to speak. And God said when he sets you up before judges and queens, I don't have to worry about what I'm going to say. He's going to speak those things. He's going to speak through me. So I wasn't worried about it when I got up there as well. I had like a couple of points that I wanted to touch, and then everything else is it's lived experience. So I'm grateful to have these platforms to be able to share like the light that God has put in me, the things that he is doing to increase someone's faith or to bring someone to Christ. And that's what the motive is. And that's the only motive for me. That's all it can be.
That's powerful. God said, listen, I need you to get your little 30-second elevator pitch. You know what I'm saying? If I say go, go. So that was amazing. I think, again, it was just so powerful. And you hit the nail on the head where you said, what you're trying to say is miracles still happen. Because in that moment, I was so captivated by, like, wow, God did that for him. Like he's standing here. Like he just got out. He's standing here. Like we're in 2026 right now. This man is here. How does that happen? Yes, that's a miracle. God is still working. I've been trying to hold back tears this whole time. I'm going to get through this. We're almost done. We're almost done. I just want to keep saying I appreciate you for letting the Lord use you and give you a testimony. For someone who's listening, who is in that revolving door, in and out of trouble, or who loves somebody who is in that revolving door, what do you want them to know?
I would say to the individual, you have to keep the faith. Don't let your faith die out. Just keep it. And it's the evidence of things not seen. So even when you don't think it's coming, it's there. Just keep believing.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I feel like that goes for both the person that is going through it and the loved ones that are watching it happen. Because just like your mom she was saying, it's coming, just like people were saying, in the Bible temple, I know Jesus is coming. I know that this is going to happen. There are people that, and I always forget the name, who was almost, 100 years old, and he finally saw the Redeemer come. Sometimes we're like, Lord, when? When is this going to happen? Well, but you told me, But when is it going to happen? I will say that some of us will not see it in our flesh now. Some of us will not see it until we make it to the kingdom. But I just want to encourage everybody that if God said it, He will equip you to do it. It will come to pass, and His time is not our time. So like you said, let's just keep the faith. Just keep the faith. I want to ask you, what does the residue, what you survived, what does it look like now? A lot of times I do the introduction, like I like the geology definition of residuum, where it's like this coarse, gravelly material, but also could be clay. It's this composite of all the things that you are made up of. So what does that look like for you now? What does your residuum look like? Is it you're stronger because of your scars? Do you still have pain, but you're able to talk to someone else about it? What does that look like?
So definitely the foundation of Christ is still there for me. It's my foundation. Everything that I've been practicing has made it this far to where I'm at now. Like, it came out with me. I have to say it that way. I have to say it came out with me, so it doesn't change. Like, and if it does change, it changes as if it was when it was changing when I was in, and that trajectory was, if it was an up and down and up, but it kept going up, and that's like, for me, I feel like my spiritual walk is the foundation, and it's continue to climb as long as I continue to keep Jesus Christ, my Lord and Savior, first and foremost, and acknowledge and be honest with myself. Going back to having that courage and be willing to continue in the faith. The continue in the faith part is very huge. So stepping out by faith and doing things I've never done before, like planting trees and with organizations, going out to go speak at high schools and, feeding people who are asking and not telling nobody about it, and it's like those little things, like trying to find somebody that needs something. I left it. I don't like to talk about it, but there was an individual who needed some help yesterday after I left church. And it's like God put me there for that purpose. And it's those moments that make up this residue that you're talking about. Like, and it's founded in humility, compassion, empathy. It's founded in the greatest commandment, which is love. Love God. But how you gonna love God who you haven't seen when you're not loving your neighbor? So it's founded in God's grace for me, because it is through that grace that I'm able to continue to work on myself. Not that I'm trying to be saved, because I know without a shadow of a doubt that I'm saved. But the process of this residue is a continual work of allowing the people around me to help me and have Him mold me into the man of God that God has called me to be. So I'm definitely called, and I'm definitely not looking out for the self that I was so protected myself. I was so into doing before incarceration. So now it's more so like looking out for other individuals.
That is beautiful, and that sums it up so nicely. When you were sentenced to 86 years to life, the state was telling you one thing: you are what you did, and what you did will be the last word over your life. But Residuum says there's always something left. There's always a residue that the fire didn't take. And for you, that was a soul that God wasn't finished with. I keep thinking about what you said about what freedom felt like and hugging a tree, right? That beautiful image, that's what survival really sounds like. For those of you listening right now, maybe you feel like you're in your own prison. Maybe it's a literal one. Maybe it's an addiction. Maybe it's a cycle you can't break. Maybe it's shame from a number that was put on you, a charge, a diagnosis, a divorce, a past. I want you to hear this story as an invitation. 86 years to life was not the end of his story. And whatever number has been spoken over you is not the end of yours either. Brother Allen, I want to thank you so much for surviving and being a survivor. Thank you for coming home, and thank you for letting God use your residue. To everyone listening, if this story hit you, I'd like you to share it with someone who needs to know that life sentences can be broken inside and out. If you or someone you love is coming home from incarceration and needs support, I will link some reentry resources in the show notes below. Until next time, this has been Survivor's Residuum. Thank you for tuning in to Survivor's Residuum. Oh, remember, don't forget to remember to use your noggin. Bye.